Captain Sarah Phoenix Martinez had always been told she was too small, too aggressive, and too reckless to be a fighter pilot. Standing barely 5 feet 4 inches tall with calloused hands and steel gray eyes, she had clawed her way through the academy despite every instructor who tried to wash her out. The scars on her knuckles told stories of fights with cadets who thought a woman from the slums of Neo Angeles had no business in a cockpit. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Defense Coalition for exactly 43 years. Earth's pilots were considered adequate but unremarkable by alien standards. The Zephyrian flight commanders with their superior reflexes, the silicon-based Chronari with their ability to withstand crushing G-forces, and the insectoid Vexhi with their compound eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously. They were the elite. Humans were relegated to support roles, cargo runs, and patrol duties in quiet sectors. Sarah's squadron, the 47th Terran Fighter Wing, was stationed on Kepler Station, a backwater outpost monitoring the disputed border between Coalition space and the hostile hegemony. Most days involved routine patrols where nothing happened except the slow burn of boredom. The other human pilots had grown comfortable with their second-class status, content to let the alien aces handle the real fighting. But Sarah had never been content with anything in her life. She spent her off hours in the simulators, pushing her F-22X Raptor beyond its recommended limits. The maintenance crews complained about the stress fractures in her fighter's airframe, but Sarah didn't care. While other pilots relaxed in the rec room, she studied hegemony fighter tactics, memorized their weapon specifications, and analyzed every scrap of combat footage she could find. The hegemony was humanity's nightmare made real. A collection of aggressive species that viewed the coalition as weak and ripe for conquest. Their pilots flew MiG-29 variants enhanced with alien technology, faster engines, stronger hulls, and energy weapons that could slice through coalition fighters like paper. In every major engagement over the past 5 years, coalition forces had been steadily pushed back. On this particular morning, Sarah was running diagnostics on her fighter when the alarm klaxons began their bone-chilling wail. Red lights bathed the hangar as pilots scrambled toward their ships. Commander Vexhi Zach 9, the station's alien flight leader, was already barking orders through the comm system. Hegemony strike force detected at jump point 7, 12 enemy fighters confirmed. All squadrons scramble immediately. Sarah's heart hammered as she sprinted toward her Raptor. This was it, actual combat, not another milk run patrol. She slid into her cockpit with practiced efficiency, her hands flying over the startup sequence. Around her, other fighters were powering up with the urgent whine of engines coming online. "Phoenix, you're staying behind," Commander Zach 9's voice crackled through her headset. "Guard the station." Sarah's blood turned cold. "Sir, my fighter is operational and ready for—" "Negative. You will remain on defensive patrol. This is not a request." She watched helplessly as the primary strike force launched. 6 Zephyrian interceptors with their sleek, organic curves, 4 Chronari heavy fighters that looked like flying bricks, and 2 Vexhi multi-role craft bristling with weapons. The human pilots from her squadron were assigned to the second wave, backup support that would likely never see action. The battle began 18 minutes later. Sarah monitored the tactical display from her cockpit, listening to the radio chatter as coalition forces engaged the enemy. At first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. The alien pilots performed their coordinated attacks with textbook precision, their superior technology and reflexes giving them the edge. Then the trap was sprung. Multiple contacts, hegemony reinforcements jumping in. The panic in the Zephyrian flight leader's voice was unmistakable. "Count shows additional 18 fighters. We are heavily outnumbered." The tactical display exploded with red contacts. What had been a manageable engagement suddenly became a slaughter. The hegemony had used their initial strike force as bait, drawing the coalition's best pilots into a carefully prepared ambush. "All fighters, fall back to defensive positions," Commander Zach 9 ordered, but it was too late. The enemy had them surrounded. Sarah watched the blue icons representing friendly fighters begin to wink out one by one. The radio filled with distress calls, reports of systems failures, and the final transmissions of dying pilots. Within 10 minutes, half the coalition force was gone. "Phoenix, you are cleared to join the battle," came the desperate order. "All available fighters engage immediately." But as Sarah began her launch sequence, a massive explosion rocked the station. Emergency lights flickered as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Through her canopy, she could see fires burning in the outer hull where hegemony bombers had scored direct hits. Launch Bay Alpha is compromised. The traffic controller's voice was strained. All fighters route through Bay Beta. Sarah's fighter was trapped in Alpha Bay as emergency bulkheads slammed shut. She was stuck, helpless to watch as the remaining coalition forces were systematically destroyed. The space around Kepler Station became a graveyard of twisted metal and expanding gas clouds. The final blow came when Commander Zach 9's fighter took a direct hit from a hegemony plasma cannon. His last words echoed through the comm system. "Station is lost. All survivors evacuate immediately." Sarah pounded her fist against the cockpit canopy as the hegemony fleet moved into occupation positions around the station. Her fighter was operational. Her weapons were loaded and she was burning with the need to fight. But she was trapped behind 3 feet of twisted blast doors with no way to reach the battle. The defeat was total. Of the 12 coalition fighters that had launched, only 2 managed to escape through hyperspace jumps. The hegemony now controlled the sector, and Kepler Station was their prize. As emergency teams worked to restore power and clear the launch bay, Sarah sat in her cockpit and stared at the tactical display. The hegemony fighters were already setting up patrol patterns, confident in their superiority. They had crushed the coalition's best pilots without breaking a sweat. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had left Sarah Martinez alive, and she was very, very angry. 3 hours after the devastating defeat, Kepler Station was a tomb. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through corridors filled with the acrid smell of burned electronics and the metallic taste of fear. Sarah finally managed to extract her fighter from the damaged launch bay. But by then the hegemony had established complete control of the surrounding space. The survivors huddled in the station's emergency command center, a reinforced bunker deep in the station's core. Captain Elena Vasquez, the station's human commanding officer, looked like she had aged 10 years in the span of a single battle. Her uniform was torn and stained with coolant fluid from damaged systems. "Status report," Vasquez said, her voice hoarse from shouting orders during the evacuation. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen, the tactical officer, consulted his damaged console. 67 confirmed casualties. The medical bay is overwhelmed. We've lost primary power to sections 7 through 12. The hegemony has deployed sensor nets throughout the system. Any ship trying to leave will be detected and destroyed within minutes. Sarah stood at the back of the room, still wearing her flight suit. Her hands were clenched into fists as she listened to the catalog of defeat. Through the reinforced viewports, she could see hegemony fighters patrolling in neat formations, their hulls gleaming with alien technology. "What about the distress beacon?" asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the station's chief medical officer. "Sent and acknowledged," Chen replied. "But the nearest coalition fleet is 6 days away. The hegemony will have stripped this station bare and moved on by then. Or they'll execute everyone aboard as an example," muttered Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, the maintenance supervisor. "That's what they did at Proxima Station." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories about hegemony occupation policies. They took what they wanted and eliminated potential threats. A captured coalition station would either be converted into a forward base or simply destroyed to prevent its recapture. Sarah stepped forward. "Captain, I request permission to attempt a breakout." Vasquez looked at her with tired eyes. "Martinez, you saw what happened to 12 fighters with superior technology and alien pilots. What makes you think one human in a damaged fighter can accomplish anything?" "Because they're not expecting it," Sarah replied. "They've established patrol patterns based on the assumption that we're beaten. They're conducting routine sweeps, not combat operations. Their guard is down." Commander Chen shook his head. "Even if you somehow made it past their patrols, where would you go? The nearest coalition base is 3 jump points away, and they're monitoring all the hyperspace routes." Sarah had been thinking about this problem since the moment the bay doors had finally opened. During her years of studying hegemony tactics, she had noticed something that the alien commanders seemed to overlook. They were methodical, predictable, and supremely confident in their technological superiority. But they had never faced a pilot desperate enough to try the impossible. "There's a way," she said. "The asteroid field in Sector 9. It's too dense for their sensors to penetrate effectively, and the gravitational anomalies will mask engine signatures. I can use it to get close to their perimeter, then punch through during their shift change. That's suicide, Dr. Tanaka protested. The asteroids in that field are moving at relativistic speeds. One collision and you're vapor. Better than sitting here waiting for them to decide our fate, Sarah shot back. At least this way someone fights back. Captain Vasquez studied the tactical display, her fingers drumming against the console. The hegemony patrol patterns were indeed predictable, efficient but routine. Their commanders were already thinking about their next target, not worried about resistance from a supposedly beaten enemy. What's your real plan, Martinez? Vasquez asked quietly. This isn't about escape, is it? Sarah met her commanding officer's gaze. No, ma'am. It's about sending a message. The truth was that Sarah had no intention of running. She had spent 3 hours studying the enemy formations, analyzing their movements and looking for weaknesses. The hegemony pilots were good, better than good, but they were flying in peacetime patterns, confident that no single fighter could threaten them. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. Captain, Chief Rodriguez spoke up. If Martinez is serious about this, there are some modifications we could make to her fighter. Strip out the life support reserves, the emergency rations, anything non-essential. We could boost her weapons capacity and engine output. That would be a one-way trip, Chen pointed out. It already is, Sarah replied without hesitation. The room erupted in arguments. Some officers supported the plan as their only chance to strike back, while others called it a meaningless gesture that would only get Sarah killed. But Sarah wasn't listening to the debate. She was studying the tactical display, memorizing patrol routes and timing windows. The hegemony had 3 fighter squadrons maintaining control of the system. Alpha Squadron consisted of 4 MiG-29 variants equipped with plasma cannons and energy shields. They were the heavy hitters, designed to eliminate capital ships in fortified positions. Bravo Squadron was 6 lighter interceptors optimized for speed and maneuverability. Charlie Squadron was the wild card, too. Experimental fighters with technology that coalition intelligence couldn't identify. All of them were piloted by veterans who had never tasted defeat. Sarah's modified F-22X would be outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outnumbered by a factor of 12 to 1. Her only advantages were surprise and the fact that they would underestimate her based on her species. That would have to be enough. Captain Vasquez finally called for silence. Martinez, if we do this, what are your chances of success? Sarah considered lying, offering false hope to boost morale. But these people deserve the truth. Against 3 enemy fighters? Maybe 50-50. Against 12? She shrugged. Probably 0. But sometimes 0% is better than giving up. And you're willing to die for a gesture? I'm willing to die to prove that humans don't surrender, Sarah corrected. Every species in the coalition thinks we're weak, that we only got our membership because the Zephyrians felt sorry for us. Maybe it's time to show them what we're really made of. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, weighing the decision. Outside, hegemony fighters continued their lazy patrols, secure in their dominance. Inside, 67 survivors waited to learn their fate. Chief Rodriguez, the captain finally said, you have 4 hours to modify Martinez's fighter, strip everything non-essential and maximize her offensive capabilities. Yes, ma'am. Commander Chen, I want detailed analysis of enemy patrol patterns and the best attack vectors. Understood. Vasquez turned to Sarah. And you, Martinez, you have 4 hours to figure out how to do the impossible. Sarah smiled for the first time since the battle began. Thank you, Captain. As the command crew dispersed to their tasks, Sarah remained at the tactical display. She had 4 hours to plan an attack that would either make history or simply add her name to the casualty list. Either way, the hegemony was about to discover that counting out a human was the biggest mistake they could make. The next 4 hours passed like a fever dream of preparation and desperate innovation. Chief Rodriguez and his maintenance team worked with the focused intensity of people who knew they were preparing for a suicide mission. They stripped Sarah's F-22X Raptor down to its essential components, removing everything that wasn't directly related to flying or fighting. Out came the emergency rations, the extended life support systems, the escape pod, and even the ejection seat. Every pound of weight saved meant more room for ammunition and fuel. Rodriguez personally oversaw the installation of additional missile hardpoints, cramming the fighter with every weapon they could fit. This bird's going to handle like a brick with rockets strapped to it, Rodriguez warned as he sealed the final access panel. The center of gravity is completely off, and we've exceeded the manufacturer's recommended weapon load by 30%. Sarah ran her hands along the fighter's hull, feeling the slight vibrations from the overstressed airframe. Will it fly? It'll fly, Rodriguez confirmed. Whether it'll survive the first engagement is another question. Meanwhile, Commander Chen had been analyzing hegemony patrol patterns with the obsessive detail of a man trying to solve an impossible puzzle. He had identified a narrow window, exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds, when the asteroid field in Sector 9 would be partially screened from enemy sensors. Here's the problem, he explained to Sarah as they huddled over the tactical display. You'll have to approach through this corridor between patrol routes. Alpha Squadron passes through every 8 minutes, Bravo Squadron every 12 minutes. You'll have maybe 90 seconds to reach the asteroid field without being detected. Sarah studied the approach vector. It was a knife-edge balance of timing and precision. Too early and Alpha Squadron would spot her. Too late, and Bravo Squadron would intercept her before she reached cover. What about their sensor range? She asked. That's where it gets interesting, Chen replied. We've been monitoring their emissions patterns. They're using standard hegemony detection arrays, which are designed to spot large formations at extreme range. A single fighter running silent might slip through their sensor grid, especially if you stay close to the background radiation from the asteroid field. Dr. Tanaka approached with a medical kit and a grim expression. I've prepared stimulant injectors for the mission, she said. Your body will be under extreme stress during high-G maneuvers, especially in an overloaded fighter. These will keep you conscious and alert, but there will be side effects. What kind of side effects? Elevated heart rate, tunnel vision, possible cardiac arrhythmia. And when they wear off, she shrugged. Well, you probably won't live long enough for that to matter. Sarah accepted the injectors without comment. Everything about this mission was designed to maximize her combat effectiveness for a brief, brilliant moment. Long-term survival wasn't part of the equation. As the final preparations continued, word of the mission spread through the station's survivors. They came in small groups to the hangar bay, technicians, medical staff, junior officers, all wanting to see the fighter that would carry their hopes into battle. Some offered prayers in languages Sarah didn't recognize. Others simply stood in respectful silence. Captain Vasquez arrived 30 minutes before launch carrying a small data chip. Martinez, this contains tactical analysis of every hegemony engagement for the past 2 years. I want you to upload it to your fighter's computer. Ma'am, my computer's memory is already maxed out with navigation data and weapon systems. Then delete something else, Vasquez ordered. This information might give you an edge. Sarah accepted the chip, knowing she would need every possible advantage. As she climbed into her modified cockpit for the final systems check, she was struck by how different everything felt. The fighter was heavier, less responsive, and the weapon selector showed more options than she had ever seen in a single aircraft. 6 missile hardpoints instead of the standard 4. Twin plasma cannons borrowed from a scrapped Zephyrian fighter. An experimental railgun that Rodriguez had somehow integrated into the nose assembly. Even a small complement of proximity mines that could be deployed like chaff. Phoenix, this is Control, came Chen's voice through her headset. Enemy Patrol Alpha 7 is approaching your launch window. You have a go for departure in 90 seconds. Sarah's hands moved through the startup sequence one final time. Engine ignition, weapons online, sensors to passive mode. The fighter trembled around her like a barely contained explosion waiting to happen. All stations, this is Phoenix. She broadcast on the internal communication channel. If anyone's listening to this later, tell them we didn't go quietly. 60 seconds to launch window, Chen announced. Through her cockpit canopy, Sarah could see the stars beyond the hangar bay doors. Somewhere out there, 12 enemy fighters were conducting routine patrols, completely unaware that their supremacy was about to be challenged by a single human pilot in an overloaded fighter. 30 seconds. Sarah closed her eyes and thought about her journey to this moment. The academy instructors who had tried to wash her out. The alien commanders who had dismissed human pilots as second-rate. The hegemony forces that had crushed the coalition's best fighters just hours earlier. They had all made the same mistake. They had underestimated the fury of a human who refused to surrender. 10 seconds. Launch when ready. Sarah opened her eyes and gripped the control stick. Phoenix launching now. The catapult system hurled her fighter out of the hangar bay with bone-crushing acceleration. Stars wheeled around her canopy as she rolled into the approach vector Chen had calculated. Her instruments showed green across the board, but she could feel the fighter's reluctance to respond to her commands. "Phoenix, you are clear of station sensor shadow," Chen reported. "No enemy contacts detected. You are go for Sector 9 approach." Sarah activated her stealth systems and began the delicate process of threading between patrol routes. Her fighter's modified engines ran at minimal power, barely above background radiation levels. Every few seconds she checked her chronometer. The timing had to be perfect. Ahead of her, the asteroid field loomed like a three-dimensional maze of spinning rock and ice. The gravitational anomalies that made it dangerous also made it the perfect place to hide. If she could reach it undetected, she would have the cover she needed to plan her attack. "Enemy contact bearing 27 Mark 4, her computer announced in its flat electronic voice. "Classification Hegemony Interceptor Bravo Squadron." Sarah's blood turned cold. One of the patrol fighters had deviated from its predicted route and was heading directly toward her position. In less than 30 seconds, its sensors would detect her fighter's heat signature. She had two choices: abort the mission and slink back to the station, or commit to the attack right now before she was ready. Sarah pushed her throttles forward and dove toward the asteroid field. Behind her, proximity alarms began screaming as the hegemony fighter locked onto her signature. The mission had begun ahead of schedule, but there was no turning back now. The real fight was about to start. The medical bay aboard the Nexus Pride had never housed a Zargeth patient before. The ship's automated systems had required extensive recalibration to accommodate the raiders' unique physiology, while the medical staff maintained a respectful distance from their former enemy. Only the humans seemed comfortable in the creature's presence, treating him like any other wounded soldier rather than a deadly adversary. Zixtal observed from the bay's upper observation deck, watching Staff Sergeant Chen check on the patient's condition. The Zargeth warrior, who had identified himself as Kethvar of the Crimson Nest, was conscious and alert, though his injuries would require several weeks to heal properly. "Your medical technology is impressive," Kethvar was saying, his mandibles clicking in what Zixtal's translator indicated was approval. "The pain suppressors work without dulling my combat reflexes." Chen nodded, making notes on a medical datapad. "We've had a lot of practice treating different species. Comes with the job when you're fighting all over the galaxy." "Fighting." Kethvar repeated the word with something resembling reverence. "Your people fight well, human. I have never seen warriors move as you do in battle." It was beautiful in its way. The human paused in his documentation, studying the alien warrior with curiosity rather than suspicion. "You guys weren't exactly amateurs either. That crossfire position on level 3 was textbook tactical thinking. If we hadn't known the facility's layout, you would have had us." Zixtal felt his optical sensors refocus in surprise. The human was actually complimenting their enemy's combat performance, discussing the battle as if it had been some sort of sporting event rather than life or death struggle. "Yet you defeated us completely," Kethvar observed. 43 warriors of the Crimson Nest, all dead save myself. How is this possible? We had superior numbers, defensive positions, and knowledge of the facility's layout. Chen pulled up a chair beside the medical bed, settling in with the casual manner of someone accustomed to having difficult conversations. "Want an honest answer? You fought like you expected to win through strength and aggression alone. That works against most species, but humans. We grew up on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We learned to fight smart because we couldn't always fight strong." "Explain this fighting smart," Kethvar requested, his compound eyes fixed intently on the human. "Take that ambush position you set up. Textbook crossfire, like I said. Any normal military unit would have either retreated or called for heavy weapons support. But we're not normal." Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "See, on Earth, humans weren't the strongest predators. We weren't the fastest or the toughest. We survived because we could think our way out of problems that bigger. Stronger creatures couldn't." Zixtal found himself leaning closer to the observation window, despite himself fascinated by the human's explanation. "So when we saw your crossfire," Chen continued, "we didn't think about how to fight through it. We thought about how to make it irrelevant. Rodriguez went around through the maintenance tunnels, Tank used the loading bay access, and I went straight up through the ventilation system. By the time you realized what was happening, you were surrounded instead of surrounding us." Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep contemplation in his species. You turned our strength into weakness. Exactly. That's how humans fight. We don't try to be stronger or tougher than our enemies. We try to be smarter and more adaptable. The Zargeth warrior was silent for several minutes, processing this information. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note that Zixtal had never heard from his species: uncertainty. On my world, warriors are judged by their ability to face death without flinching. The greatest honor comes from dying in glorious battle against impossible odds. Yet you have shown me warriors who defeat impossible odds rather than dying gloriously against them. Chen nodded slowly. Different philosophies. Humans believe the greatest honor comes from completing the mission and bringing your people home alive. We'll die for the cause if we have to, but we'd rather live for it. Live for the cause, Kethvar repeated the phrase as if testing its weight. This is why you aided me after the battle. Not mercy, but duty to the living. Something like that. Chen stood, checking his chrono. Get some rest. The doc says you should be mobile in a few days, and then we'll arrange transport back to Zargeth space. Kethavar's entire body tensed at those words. You would return me to my people? Even knowing I will likely face you in battle again. The human paused at the medical bay's entrance, turning back with that peculiar expression Zixtal was beginning to recognize. Part amusement, part challenge, part respect. Maybe, maybe not. Today taught us both something about how the other side fights. Next time might be different. After Chen left, Zixtal remained at the observation window studying the wounded Zargeth warrior. Kethvar lay motionless on the medical bed, but his eyes remained active, clearly processing the implications of his conversation with the human. The commander's personal communicator chimed with an incoming priority message from Galactic Command. The text appeared on his visual display, and he felt his secondary nervous system fire warning impulses as he read, Commander Zixtal. Preliminary reports of joint operation success noted. Request detailed analysis of human combat performance for integration into new tactical doctrines. Additional joint operations with human units approved pending your assessment. Priority Alpha classification. Zixtal stared at the message, his mandibles clicking with involuntary stress responses. Galactic Command wanted to study the humans, to learn from them, possibly to replicate their methods. But what they had witnessed today wasn't simply superior tactics or better training. It was the product of an evolutionary path so divergent from the galactic norm that it might be impossible to replicate. He began, composing his response, then stopped, deleting the words before they could be transmitted. How could he explain in a formal report that these humans fought like they were born for it? That they treated deadly combat as a challenging puzzle to be solved, rather than a trauma to be endured? That they showed more concern for wounded enemies than most species showed for their own casualties? The more he considered the tactical implications, the more disturbing they became. If humans could routinely defeat superior numbers of enhanced warriors using primitive equipment and unconventional tactics, what would they be capable of with access to advanced galactic technology? A soft chime from the medical bay drew his attention back to Kethvar. The Zargeth warrior had activated the room's communication system and was speaking in the rapid, clicking language of his people. Zixtal's translator worked to parse the complex grammatical structures. Nest Mother, this is Kethvar of the Crimson Nest. I must report a discovery that changes everything we know about warfare in this galaxy. The humans are not like other species. They are something new, something that makes our traditional methods obsolete. The response came through encrypted channels, but Zixtal's intelligence training allowed him to decode the basic meaning. The Zargeth leadership wanted details, tactical assessments, weaknesses that could be exploited in future encounters. Kethvar's answer surprised everyone listening. There are no exploitable weaknesses, Nest Mother. The humans adapt too quickly, think too differently. They are what we might have become if we had learned to evolve our minds as we evolved our bodies. The transmission ended, leaving the medical bay in silence. Zixtal realized he had just witnessed something unprecedented. A Zargeth warrior acknowledging the superiority of another species' military doctrine. In their entire history, the Raiders had never shown such deference to anyone. 3 days into the return journey to the Nexus Prime Station, the Nexus Pride encountered an emergency that would forever change Commander Zixtal's understanding of human capabilities. The ship's automated systems detected an unscheduled drop from hyperspace. Never a good sign in the contested outer systems. "Commander," his sensor operator announced. Optical stalks extending an alarm. "We're picking up a distress beacon. Galactic merchant vessel. Fortune's Dream reports hull breach and engine failure. They're requesting immediate assistance." Zixtal studied the tactical display with practiced caution. Distress calls in this region were often pirates attempting to lure unsuspecting vessels into ambush positions. However, the beacon's encryption codes appeared authentic, and the ship's registry checked against galactic commerce databases. "Sir," his communications officer added, "they're reporting passenger casualties. Medical emergency aboard." The decision should have been simple: investigate the distress call and render aid if genuine. But something about the situation triggered Zixtal's combat instincts. The merchant vessel's position was suspiciously close to an asteroid field that would provide excellent cover for hostile ships. "Staff Sergeant Chen to the bridge," Zixtal commanded. If this was a trap, he wanted the human's tactical insight before proceeding. Chen arrived within minutes, still wearing his combat armor, despite being officially off duty. The human studied the tactical display with those peculiar eyes that seemed to see patterns others missed. "What's your assessment, Staff Sergeant?" Zixtal asked. "Smells like a trap," Chen replied without hesitation. "Merchant vessel in distress, conveniently located near perfect ambush terrain. Medical emergency that requires immediate response. Classic pirate tactics. Yet if the emergency is genuine, people are dying while we debate tactics." Chen nodded, understanding the dilemma. "True, but going in blind gets everyone killed. What's the sensor resolution on that asteroid field?" Zixtal's sensor operator manipulated the display, enhancing the asteroid field's readings. "Limited, sir. Too much mineral interference for detailed scans. We could launch probe drones, but that would take 30 minutes for comprehensive coverage. Too long if there are real casualties," Chen observed. "But I've got an idea. How many combat shuttles does this ship carry?" 4 standard shuttles plus the human drop pods." Chen's expression shifted into what Zixtal was learning to recognize as tactical calculation mode. "Here's what we do. Load 2 shuttles with medical teams and emergency supplies. Make it look like a standard rescue operation. Meanwhile, Rodriguez, Tank, and I take our drop pods and approach through the asteroid field. If it's a trap, we'll be in position to hit the pirates from behind when they spring it." The plan was audacious to the point of recklessness. The humans would be deploying into potentially hostile territory with no backup and no clear extraction plan. Yet something about Chen's confidence made it seem not only feasible but inevitable. "Staff Sergeant, if this is indeed an ambush, you'll be facing unknown numbers of hostile vessels with only 3 soldiers." Chen's grin was becoming familiar, though no less unsettling. "Commander, 3 humans in a target-rich environment isn't a problem. It's an opportunity." 30 minutes later, Zixtal watched the tactical display with growing tension as the plan unfolded. The rescue shuttles approached the merchant vessel openly, broadcasting medical assistance protocols and maintaining normal communications. Meanwhile, 3 human signatures moved through the asteroid field like ghosts, their primitive drop pods somehow evading detection by sophisticated sensor arrays. "Medical shuttle Mercy to merchant vessel," the transmission crackled with atmospheric interference. "We're approaching your starboard docking bay. Prepare to receive emergency medical teams." The response came immediately, perhaps too quickly. Acknowledged. "Mercy. We have 17 casualties requiring immediate evacuation." Zixtal's tactical computer flagged the response as suspicious. 17 was an oddly specific number for initial casualty reports, and the voice pattern suggested stress levels inconsistent with genuine emergency situations. "Commander," his sensor operator announced, detecting massive energy signatures emerging from the asteroid field. Multiple vessels powering weapon systems. The trap was sprung. 6 pirate vessels burst from concealment among the asteroids, their weapons already locked onto the rescue shuttles. These weren't desperate raiders using improvised equipment. They were military-grade vessels with professional crews and coordinated tactics. All shuttles. "Evasive maneuvers," Zixtal commanded, but he knew it was too late. The pirates had positioned themselves perfectly to prevent escape, and the rescue shuttles were defenseless civilian craft. That's when the humans struck. 3 drop pods launched from deep within the asteroid field, their trajectories calculated to intercept the pirate vessels at maximum velocity. But instead of the controlled landing Zixtal expected, the pods were aimed directly at the enemy ships themselves. "What are they doing?" his tactical officer demanded. "Those pods will be destroyed on impact." Chen's voice crackled over the communication system, calm despite the fact that he was riding a missile trajectory toward an armored warship. "Tank, you take the cruiser." Rodriguez hit the destroyer. "I've got the command vessel." "Roger that," came Tank's reply. "See you on the other side." The first pod struck a pirate cruiser's engine section with kinetic force equivalent to a torpedo strike. The explosion that followed suggested the humans had somehow rigged their pods as improvised weapons, but instead of debris, Zixtal's sensors detected an active human signature moving inside the enemy vessel. "Impossible," his tactical officer whispered. "No one could survive that impact." The second pod punched through a destroyer's hull plating, and again Rodriguez's signature appeared inside the enemy ship. Weapons fire began erupting throughout the vessel's interior as the human fought his way through corridors designed for different species. Chen's pod struck the command vessel's bridge section directly. For a moment, Zixtal thought the human had miscalculated and killed himself. Then enemy communications began broadcasting on open channels, screams, weapons fire, and what sounded like a single human voice counting down enemy casualties. "Boarding party of 1 to Pirate Bridge." Chen's voice came through intercepted transmissions. "Surrender now and you might live to see trial." The pirate response was predictable, concentrated fire from every weapon they could bring to bear inside their own ship. But human signatures continued moving through all 3 vessels, somehow avoiding destruction while systematically eliminating resistance. "Commander?" Kethvar's voice came from the medical bay, where he had been monitoring the battle. "Request permission to join the humans." Zixtal's mandibles clicked in astonishment. "You're injured and technically a prisoner of war." "I am a warrior," Kethvar replied simply. "And those humans fight like nothing I have ever seen. If I am to die today, let it be alongside such warriors." Before Zixtal could respond, Kethvar had somehow activated the medical bay's emergency release systems and was making his way toward the shuttle bays. His injuries were far from healed, but Zargeth physiology allowed for remarkable temporary recovery when combat stimulants were involved. "Medical shuttle Hope to Nexus Pride," came an unexpected transmission. "We have a Zargeth warrior requesting passage to the battle zone. He says he has information about pirate vessel layouts." Zixtal realized the situation had moved beyond his control. 3 humans had turned a carefully planned ambush into a boarding action against superior numbers, and now a wounded enemy warrior was volunteering to join them. Military doctrine had no protocols for this scenario. "Permission granted," he heard himself say. "All units provide support as requested." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, 6 pirate vessels had been captured intact, their crews either dead or surrendering. The humans had fought through ships designed for different species, using improvised tactics and captured weapons to achieve complete victory. But what haunted Zixtal's dreams afterward wasn't the tactical impossibility of what he'd witnessed. It was the final transmission from Chen as the battle concluded. "Nexus Pride, this is boarding team. Objective complete, all vessels secured. Casualties 0. Oh, and Commander? We found the real merchant crew. They're alive, locked in the cargo hold of the lead pirate ship. Looks like we got here just in time." The debriefing room aboard Nexus Pride had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Commander Zixtal sat across from 3 humans who had just accomplished the impossible, while a wounded Zargeth warrior occupied a specially modified chair nearby. The rescued merchant crew had been transferred to medical facilities, but their testimonies painted a picture that challenged everything the Galactic Marines thought they knew about hostage rescue operations. "Let me understand this correctly," Zixtal began, reviewing his notes with mandibles clicking in bewilderment. "You used your drop pods as kinetic weapons to breach enemy hull integrity, then fought through 6 different ship designs using improvised tactics and captured equipment." Staff Sergeant Chen nodded, as if this were routine procedure. "Pretty much, yes, sir. Though Rodriguez deserves credit for the hard part, he had to figure out Krell engineering on the fly when he captured that destroyer. Their weapon systems use completely different interface protocols." Rodriguez grinned, absently cleaning a captured plasma rifle that looked nothing like standard galactic designs. "Wasn't too bad once I figured out their targeting system." Krell ships are built for their four-armed physiology, so I had to get creative with the firing controls. Tank, whose armor bore scorch marks from enemy weapons, was examining what appeared to be a Vorthan shock weapon. The cruiser was interesting. Vorthan gravity manipulation tech in the engine room. Took me a while to figure out how to use their own systems against them. Zixtal struggled to process what he was hearing. These humans had not only survived impacts that should have killed them, but had immediately adapted to using alien technology designed for completely different physiologies. It was a level of battlefield adaptation that exceeded anything in galactic military databases. What I don't understand, Zixtal continued, is how you survived the initial impacts. Our sensors recorded kinetic forces equivalent to artillery strikes. Chen exchanged glances with his teammates before answering. Human bodies are more resilient than most species realize, sir. We evolved on a high-gravity world with an unstable climate. Our bones are denser, our muscles more adaptable, and our nervous systems are designed to function under extreme stress. But more importantly, Tank added, we've learned to use enemy force against itself. Those impacts weren't random. We calculated the angles to use the ship's own structural supports to absorb and redirect the kinetic energy. Cathvar, who had remained silent throughout most of the debriefing, finally spoke. I monitored your assault through captured communication channels. What you accomplished was not merely superior tactics, it was a fundamental redefinition of what warfare can be. The Zargeth warrior's words carried weight that made everyone in the room pay attention. His species had been fighting across the galaxy for centuries, accumulating experience against dozens of different opponents. Explain, Zixtal requested. Kethavar's compound eyes fixed on each human in turn. Most species approach combat as a problem to be solved through predetermined methods. Nixari rely on technological superiority and coordinated tactics. Zargeth use aggression and resilience. Krell employ overwhelming numbers. But humans treat each battle as a unique puzzle requiring innovative solutions. Chen leaned forward, interested in the alien warrior's perspective. How so? When you breached the command vessel's bridge, the pirates expected you to fight like other boarding parties. Systematic room-to-room clearing, establishment of defensive positions, coordination with external support. Instead, you immediately targeted their command structure, used their own internal security systems against them, and turned their defensive preparations into traps. Zixtal reviewed the tactical recordings, seeing them now through Kethvar's analysis. The human approach had indeed violated every principle of standard boarding operations. Where conventional tactics emphasized caution and consolidation, the humans had struck with lightning speed and overwhelming violence, never allowing their enemies time to coordinate resistance. But what happens, Zixtal asked, when you encounter enemies who can match your adaptability? The question brought a moment of silence to the room. Then Chen smiled, not the casual grin Zixtal had grown accustomed to, but something sharper and more predatory. That would be interesting, Chen replied quietly. See, Commander, humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years before we ever left Earth. Every tactic we use against alien species, we learned fighting other humans. And other humans were always adapting right back at us. Rodriguez nodded agreement. Makes you better when your training partners are as smart and vicious as your enemies. We learned to think 3 moves ahead because if you didn't, some other human would outthink you. Tank chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both friendly and ominous. Plus, humans specialize in fighting dirty when we have to. Most species have codes of honor that limit their tactical options. Humans have codes of honor too, but they're more flexible when survival's on the line. Kethavar's mandibles clicked in what Zixtal recognized as fascination rather than distress. This explains why your combat performance exceeds mathematical predictions. You do not fight according to doctrine because you have no fixed doctrine. Every engagement teaches you something new about warfare itself. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Humans don't just learn from victory and defeat. We learn from how victory and defeat happen. Every battle makes us better at the next battle. The implications were staggering. Most species developed military doctrines based on their physiological and psychological strengths, then refined those doctrines through experience. But humans seem to treat doctrine as a starting point rather than a destination, constantly evolving their methods based on new information. Zixtal's communicator chimed with another priority message from Galactic Command. This time, the text made his secondary nervous system fire alarm signals. Commander Zixtal. Reports of human combat performance during pirate engagement have reached highest levels. Request immediate transfer of human unit to Galactic Defense Command for advanced tactical analysis. New threat assessments indicate major enemy offensive planned within 6 months. Human capabilities may be critical to defense planning. As Zixtal read the message, he realized that word of the humans' abilities was spreading throughout the galactic hierarchy. Soon, every military command would want access to these Deathworlders, seeking to harness their unique combat capabilities for larger strategic purposes. Staff Sergeant, Zixtal said carefully, how would your people respond to requests for expanded military cooperation with galactic forces? Shen's expression shifted subtly, and Zixtal caught a glimpse of the calculating intelligence that made humans such formidable opponents. Depends on what kind of cooperation you're talking about, sir. Humans are willing to fight alongside allies, but we don't take orders well from people who don't understand how we operate. And we definitely don't like being treated as expendable assets, Rodriguez added with deceptive casualness. Tank's agreement was even more pointed. Humans fight better when we're fighting for something we believe in, not just because someone ordered us to. The warning was clear, though diplomatically phrased. Humans would cooperate, but only as partners rather than subordinates. Any attempt to use them as disposable shock troops would likely backfire spectacularly. Kethavar spoke into the growing tension. Commander Zixtal, if I may suggest, perhaps the question is not how to control human military capabilities, but how to learn from them. The Zargath warrior's words carried implications that made everyone in the room consider possibilities none of them had previously imagined. Rather than trying to harness human methods for existing strategies, perhaps it was time to reconsider the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic warfare itself.